"You're dismissed," Candace chirped, sliding a coffee mug across the conference table like she was dealing cards at a casino. The thing clattered against the wall, spilling lukewarm coffee down the paint. "Enjoy unemployment," she added with that fake smile she'd perfected at whatever finishing school daddy paid for. I didn't say a word. Not when she called me dead weight. Not when she said the company only existed because of her last name. And not even when she fake apologized that these decisions are never personal. I just stood there while my team stared at their keyboards like they were trying to disappear into Excel. 25 years. I joined Apex Systems when it was 3 guys in a strip mall with 2 working phone lines. Back when our employee handbook was a post-it note that said, "Try not to get sued." I built the vendor chain from scratch. I wrote the compliance roadmap that kept us out of federal court. I created the licensing structure that turned us from a call center into a $300 million company. But somehow I ended up getting fired by a trust fund baby with a motivational quote tattoo, while her incompetent brother Tyler nodded along like a bobblehead in Daddy's BMW. The thing is, I'd been through corporate nonsense before. 25 years in tech, 8 years in the Army before that. Seen plenty of young officers who thought rank meant they knew everything. Usually learned different when things got real. Corporate world wasn't much different. Just nobody got shot. They just got fired. Basic training taught me to keep your mouth shut and let your work speak for itself. 30 years later, that lesson was about to pay dividends I never saw coming. The mug rolled to a stop at my feet. I picked it up, turned it over. One side said Apex, built to last. The other had our legal tagline in tiny print, licensing proprietary systems for adaptive integration. I almost laughed because I was the one who built that proprietary system. And I was the one who owned the licensing rights to it. See, here's what happens when you're methodical like military guys tend to be. You keep records. Every email, every contract, every late-night coding session in my garage while my ex-wife complained about the light under the door. That garage office where I'd rebuilt Harley engines and taught my son to change oil before he went off to college. Same workbench where I'd coded the compliance algorithm on weekends, drinking coffee at midnight. Maybe my ex was right when she said I was obsessed with work. Maybe that's part of why she left. But at least my obsession was about to pay off in ways she never imagined. I dropped the mug in the trash on my way out. Didn't say goodbye to the team. Didn't grab the severance paperwork Candace had flung at me like she was starring in some corporate reality show. Just walked out of Apex for what they thought was the last time. They didn't know the deal wasn't done. They didn't know the license wasn't theirs. They didn't know the guy they just called obsolete was about to pull the pin on a legal grenade they'd been sitting on for over a decade. That night, I sat in my garage office with 3 fingers of bourbon and opened the file cabinet I hadn't touched in years. Military habits die hard. Everything organized, everything labeled, everything in its place. Found what I was looking for in a folder marked Tax Shield June 2012 buried under a stack of IP agreements. Every guy my age knows this feeling, watching some kid half your age get promoted because they know the right buzzwords while you're still figuring out why they changed the interface on software that worked fine for 10 years. But here's the thing about experience. It teaches you to read the fine print. Clause 14.3b. 14 pages of legal language nobody ever reads, but there it was on page 9 like a gift from my younger self who actually paid attention during contract negotiations. In the event of unilateral termination of the undersigned without cause, IP rights for adaptive licensing module revert in full to entity T, Brennan Holdings LLC. That LLC was still active, still in good standing with the Secretary of State, and still 100% mine. Set it up back in 2012 for tax purposes when Apex was carving out IP rights. Smart move then, lifesaver now. I leaned back in my chair, bourbon warming my throat, rereading the clause like it was a letter from an old friend. The same compliance algorithm Candace and her brother were shopping around for $300 million didn't even belong to Apex. It was leased to them on a clause tied directly to my employment status. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, 52 years old, divorced, kids grown and gone, getting ready for what should have been a quiet slide into retirement. Instead, I was sitting in my garage at 11 at night, realizing I held the keys to the kingdom these entitled kids thought they owned. I scrolled through my contacts and found him, Phil Martinez. Used to be a junior developer on my team, now VP of Integration Strategy at TechCore Industries, same company that was sniffing around to buy Apex. Last time we talked, he was still trying to convince everyone that craft beer could replace coffee in the office. "Tom?" Phil's voice had that surprised tone of someone hearing from a ghost they owed money to. Long time, man. Everyone thought you'd retired to raise cattle in Montana or something. Not quite, I said. Listen, I need 5 minutes. Something about the Apex acquisition. Privately. Silence. Then, go on. I wrote the adaptive licensing module. You're acquiring that tech, right? Yeah, it's the core asset. It's the whole reason we're... He paused. Wait, you wrote that? I also own it. Come again? Clause 14.3b from the 2012 IP carve-out. The licensing is tied to my LLC. It reverts to me if Apex terminates me without cause. Phil cursed softly. They fired you? 15 minutes ago, I said. Candace threw a coffee mug and told me the company exists because of her last name. He groaned. Jesus. Send me the details. You'll want our legal team to verify this quietly. You want to kill the deal? I want it done right. And I want them to learn something about respect. That's when I knew this wasn't just about money or contracts. This was about something every working man understands, the principle of the thing. I sent him the clause, along with time-stamped confirmation that Brennan Holdings LLC was still the licensing entity of record. Also attached the original development logs, just in case anyone wanted to pretend I hadn't built the damn thing line by line while Candace was studying abroad and Tyler was puking in campus fountains. Later that night, my phone buzzed with a message from Phil. Our legal team is very interested in speaking with you directly. I smiled, refilled my bourbon, and clicked open the clause again. Sometimes the best revenge is just being right. The board email hit my inbox the next morning like a slap across the face. Subject line, leadership transition and deal finalization update. I already knew what it said, but I opened it anyway because you need to know exactly how bad things are before you fix them. It was worse than I expected. Candace was stepping into an elevated strategic leadership role while Tyler would be spearheading final integration efforts with the acquiring team. Corporate speak for Daddy gave us the keys to the $300 million car. Hope we don't crash it into a lake. No mention of me. No acknowledgement that the system they were selling came out of my garage during back-breaking weekends and late nights when I should have been watching football or fixing my motorcycle. According to this glowing email, I'd never existed. Just some nameless former contributor whose value had conveniently expired right before the champagne popped. I'd built the skeleton, written the nervous system, architected every logical component of that compliance algorithm. But now Tyler, who once thought API was a car insurance company, was listed as the technical point of contact. You know what really got me? My son called that afternoon. He's 26, works in finance in Chicago, smart kid. Dad, heard about Apex on the tech blogs. You doing okay? I wanted to tell him his old man was about to show those entitled brats what real work looks like. Instead, I said, I'm fine, buddy. Sometimes things work out better than you think. He laughed. You always were the optimistic type. Mom used to say you could find the silver lining in a tornado. Your mom left because I worked too much, I thought. But maybe all those late nights were about to pay for his wedding someday. The first crack in their facade came 2 days later. Phil messaged me. You should hear what just happened on the legal sync call. Apparently, Tyler had joined the call 50 minutes late, shirt untucked, holding what appeared to be an energy drink and a stress ball shaped like a football. He proceeded to fumble through a document review where he referred to data encryption as that security thing that keeps us from getting sued or whatever and called an NDA a vibe killer. At one point, he claimed he had personally overseen the encryption layer that safeguarded client-side data. I nearly choked on my coffee. Tyler once asked me if encryption meant putting a password on an Excel file. By the time the buyer's legal team wrapped up, Phil messaged me again. Their lead counsel mouthed what the hell to me on camera. Not kidding, I wanted to feel vindicated. Instead, I felt like watching your teenage neighbor try to rebuild your engine with a hammer and a YouTube video. You know it's going to end badly, but you can't look away. But it was the email I got that night that really hit home. No subject line, no signature, just 5 words. We thought you'd be there. It was sent from a burner account, probably a junior attorney who couldn't risk being seen contacting me. But it landed like a punch to the gut. They expected competence in that room. Someone who knew which clauses mattered, which technical diagrams were current, which promises were safe to make, and which would get everyone sued into next week. They were expecting me, and instead they got frat boy Tyler and Princess Candace high on their own press releases. That night I opened a folder I hadn't touched in years. License control materials. Inside were flowcharts, change logs, early memos, invoice trails, and a treasure trove of documentation they probably prayed I didn't keep. See, this is what military service teaches you. Document everything. trust nobody, and always have a backup plan. I'd learned that lesson in places where forgetting details could get people killed. Corporate America was just a different kind of battlefield. I started forwarding select files to my attorney. Original architecture sketches signed by me and dated. Email chains confirming my LLC was set up for IP protection. Invoices showing Apex paid my LLC quarterly licensing fees until 2020, when some genius in accounting decided to streamline vendor relationships. There was even an internal Slack export where Candace once typed, "LOL, what does Tom even do anymore? Dude's like a ghost around here." That last one wasn't necessary for the legal case, but it felt good to have in my back pocket. My attorney replied within the hour, "These are excellent. Keep going. We may not need to use them, but if we do, these are bullets in the chamber." I wasn't interested in revenge for revenge's sake. This was about facts, ownership, truth. I didn't need to ruin their careers. Gravity was going to do that all by itself when the floor gave out beneath them. The reversion notice went out at 9:06 a.m. I'm sharp on a Tuesday. One clean, professional email from my attorney to Apex's legal department with a CC to TechCore's counsel. Subject line, Notice of License Reversion, Adaptive Licensing Module. 6 sentences, 0 drama but maximum impact. That email had the potential to rip a $300 million rug out from under every designer loafer in that glass tower. The license, per Clause 14, 3B, was now formally revoked from Apex Systems. Effective immediately, the moment they terminated me without cause, and boy did we have documentation proving it wasn't for performance. The rights reverted to T. Brennan Holdings LLC, which was, in every legal and financial sense, me. They could keep the branding, keep the coffee mugs, keep their motivational posters about synergy and disruption. But the brains behind the operation had walked out the door with my parking pass. I didn't call Candace, didn't text anyone on the team, didn't go nuclear on LinkedIn with some passive-aggressive farewell post. No grandstanding, no speeches about corporate loyalty or family values. Just a simple back-end update on the licensing server that I still had admin access to because someone forgot to revoke my credentials. 30 years of showing up early and staying late had taught me something important. The best moves are the quiet ones. You don't need to announce you're pulling the rug out. You just pull it and let physics handle the rest. I logged into the Apex compliance dashboard, clicked into the licensing system, and adjusted one field, where it used to say Vendor Apex Systems Incorporated. I changed it to Status, pending third-party authorization. Underneath, in gray text, I added T. Brennan Holdings, LLC, signature required. Then I activated the watermark. Every document related to the adaptive licensing module now bore a faint overlay in the lower right corner. Provisional license, T. Brennan Holdings, LLC. All rights reserved. It wasn't loud. It wasn't threatening. It was just there. A soft legal whisper across every spec sheet, flow diagram, and user interface blueprint, like planting a flag on territory that was always mine to begin with. By noon, the buyer's tech team had noticed. Phil texted, "Hey, did you update something?" "The licensing docs are flagged as awaiting signature." I replied with a single word, "Yep." An hour later, TechCore's legal team pinged Apex with a polite request for clarification. One of their junior counsels sent a low-pressure note asking why the system files were watermarked by a third-party vendor not listed in the original deal documentation. Candace, of course, assumed it was a glitch. I know this because Phil forwarded me her internal Slack response. Just a formatting error or dev hiccup. Tyler says the sandbox isn't syncing properly. We'll fix it. Sure you will, sweetheart. Meanwhile, Tyler had no idea how to access the sandbox environment. Last I checked, he thought Git was a type of malware and Stack Overflow was a breakfast restaurant. But nobody panicked. Not yet. This wasn't Desert Storm. It was more like setting up a perimeter and waiting for the enemy to walk into it. The real fireworks started 3 days later when TechCore's due diligence team scheduled what they called a technical clarification meeting. Corporate speak for we need to figure out what the hell is going on before we write a check with 9 zeros. I wasn't invited, of course. But Phil kept me updated like a play-by-play announcer at a demolition derby. It started with an innocent question. One of those seemingly polite inquiries that lawyers ask when they already know something's wrong, but want to watch you lie about it in real time. "We noticed Thomas Brennan isn't on your organizational chart," said TechCore's lead negotiator, flipping through the slide deck like he was sorting junk mail. "Is he no longer with the company?" Candace smiled that glossy, over-rehearsed smile that never reaches the eyes. Thomas was part of an earlier phase of the project. We've since streamlined operations. My brother Tyler has taken over that vertical. Streamlined operations. That's what they call it when daddy's little princess decides to clean house. Tyler, sitting in a too-tight blazer with what Phil swore was a Supreme tie clip, cleared his throat. Yeah, we've modernized the stack. The old compliance code was legacy stuff. I built the current framework myself. Phil told me later he had to bite his tongue to keep from laughing. Tyler building a compliance framework was like my ex-brother-in-law building a rocket ship. Technically possible, but you wouldn't want to be anywhere near it when he hit the ignition button. TechCore's lead counsel, a woman named Patricia with the kind of perfectly composed expression that only 30 years of mergers can create, looked up and asked, "Can we get documentation of Tyler's involvement in the technical design of the adaptive licensing module?" Silence. Tyler looked to Candace. Candace looked to the Apex CFO, whose soul was visibly trying to escape through his pores. "Of course," Candace said, too fast. "We'll have our legal and development teams assemble something by close of business today." "Perfect," Patricia said, sliding her folder shut with a polite smile. "Let's hold final signatures until then. Just standard clarification protocol." It wasn't standard, and everyone in that room knew it. When a buyer delays final signature on a $300 million deal because they can't figure out who built the product they're buying, it's not protocol. It's panic disguised as professionalism. Back at Apex headquarters, the tension spread like a brush fire in August. The CFO canceled his golf weekend. 2 board members held an emergency alignment call that devolved into a blame game by the 10-minute mark. Someone from PR was seen wandering the hallway with a stapler in one hand and a bottle of antacids in the other. The receptionist told my former assistant that she hadn't seen Candace's personal aide cry that hard since HR forgot her birthday last year. Meanwhile, I stayed quiet. Still invisible, still legacy, still the guy they thought they'd erased. No gloating, no anonymous tips to the press, no email bombs, just me and my laptop in a coffee shop 3 blocks from Apex, sipping black coffee and watching the system I built slowly glitch under the weight of their incompetence. They thought I was gone. They thought I'd packed up my pride and left it on the conference table next to the severance folder. But in their rush to erase me, they'd forgotten something crucial about guys like me. We don't just disappear because some entitled kid tells us to. You can't delete the architect and expect the building to stand. Candace called it a moment of alignment, but the rest of us would have called it damage control wrapped in corporate buzzwords. She gathered the board and senior staff into the fancy conference room with the smart glass windows that never worked right and launched into what she probably thought was a rallying speech. "This company is on the brink of something historic," she beamed, pacing like a motivational speaker at a corporate retreat. Yes, the buyers have questions. That's normal in any major acquisition. But let's stay focused on the bigger picture. This is about legacy, about family, about resilience in the face of temporary setbacks. Translation: ignore the legal landmine we stepped on and keep smiling for the cameras. Then she pivoted to what everyone knew was coming. As for Thomas, she paused, scanning the room with that calculated disdain she'd perfected. Look, he was good at what he did back in the day. He was reliable, I'll give him that. But let's be honest, he was support staff. He documented things. He maintained systems. He wasn't a strategist or a visionary. Not like us, not like us. There it was, the royal we of inherited privilege. The assumption that bloodline equals competence. That a trust fund makes you qualified to run a tech company. The CFO's mouth tightened. Alan Brooks, one of the board members who remembered me from the company's broken, busted strip mall days, shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Nobody wanted to be the one to point out that the support staff had built the only thing keeping them from bankruptcy. That night, because apparently learning from mistakes isn't a Holloway family trait, Candace threw a rooftop party at a downtown hotel. Candlelit affair with signature cocktails called The Closeout and a banner reading $300 million and climbing. Everyone showed up because when the boss's daughter throws a party, attendance isn't optional. Tyler rolled in 20 minutes late with 2 women from accounting, already 3 drinks past professional. By hour 2, he was showing off a meme he'd made on his phone. "Dude, look," he barks to anyone who'd listen, waving his phone around like it contained the secrets of the universe. "I made this GIF of old Tom's spreadsheets disappearing. You've been replaced. Get it? Because the guy who made the spreadsheets got canned." They laughed. Not because it was funny, but because that's how the Candace kingdom worked. You laughed at the princess's jokes, or you started updating your resume. What Tyler didn't know, what none of them knew, was that while he was spilling vodka cranberry on his designer loafers and Candace was air-kissing investors, I was 30,000 feet above Missouri in Seat 11A of a red-eye flight chartered by TechCore Industries. No press release, no fanfare. Just a quiet ticket booked under consultant. IP compliance oversight with a private car waiting at the airport. My son had called that evening, heard something different in my voice. "Dad, you sound like you did when you came back from deployment. Like you know something nobody else does." Smart kid. Always could read people better than his old man. TechCore wasn't buying smoke and mirrors. They weren't buying buzzword presentations and rebranded deliverables. They were buying compliance technology. And now that they'd seen the watermark, traced the license trail, and reviewed the clause, there was only one person they wanted walking them through the final verification. Me. At the airport, a man in a Navy suit met me at the gate. No introductions, just a nod and a folder marked Final Phase, Signature Prep. Inside was every document Candace had claimed to finalize, and across the bottom of each page, highlighted in yellow, the same 4 words, Signature Required, T. Brennan. I didn't smile. Not yet. That would come later, in the boardroom, when I slid my business card across the table and watched Tyler's brain forget how to form words. But in that moment, with city lights blinking beneath the plane window and their champagne party hitting full swing below, I leaned back in my seat, adjusted my jacket, and reread the clause I knew by heart. In the event of unilateral termination, license shall revert in full. I wasn't just back. I was the signature. And they were about to learn what happens when you try to sell a house without owning the deed. The boardroom looked like a crime scene waiting for forensics. Polished chrome table, stacked legal binders, bottled water labels perfectly aligned. At the head sat Patricia, TechCore's lead counsel, with the kind of calm that comes from seeing every possible way a deal can go sideways. Around her, 2 corporate attorneys, the head of M&A and Phil, who was doing his best impression of someone who hadn't orchestrated this entire confrontation. Candace strutted in first. White blazer that probably cost more than most people's monthly mortgage. Confidence radiating from every step. Behind her came Tyler, cheeks flushed with either hangover or false bravado, wearing sunglasses indoors like some failed social media influencer. "Let's close this deal," she chirped, like she was announcing a wedding toast instead of trying to finalize a $300 million acquisition built on quicksand. "Glad to hear it," Patricia replied, sliding a document packet toward them. "We'll just be confirming a few final elements before signature." "No problem," Tyler said, flashing a thumbs up that belonged in a college recruitment video. "We've got all our ducks in a row. Legal vetted everything, tech is clean, and the IP is fully in-house now." "Fully in-house." Patricia's pen paused mid-signature. "Yeah, I built most of it," Tyler continued, flipping his laptop open like it might provide supporting evidence. "It's proprietary. All Apex, nothing external. 100% ours." The kid was digging his own grave with a gold-plated shovel. Patricia didn't respond right away. She whispered something to her associate, who tapped his tablet and slid it back. She read the screen for exactly 2 seconds, then calmly asked, "Then why does every file in the adaptive licensing module repository list a third-party watermark?" Candace blinked hard. "What?" Phil cleared his throat like he was announcing a funeral. Tyler tried to bluff. "Oh, that. Yeah, I think that's legacy metadata from when Tom ran some beta stuff years ago. It's been replaced." "Has it?" Patricia asked, flipping open a folder. She pointed to the lower corner of a printed schematic, my schematic, because this was generated 2 weeks ago. Tyler looked to Candace. Candace looked like she'd just realized her parachute was actually a backpack full of business cards. That's when the door opened. No knock, no announcement. Just me. I stepped inside like I'd never left. Clean gray suit, no flashy accessories, hair neat, carrying a plain leather folder in one hand and my deactivated Apex badge in the other, still gleaming like evidence in a courtroom. Candace flinched so hard her bracelet hit the table. "What the hell is he doing here?" Patricia didn't even look up from her documents. "Thomas Brennan has been asked to join this meeting by TechCore Industries. As the legal licensor of the core IP you're attempting to sell, he's essential to closing." Tyler actually laughed, a single snort that died when Phil looked him square in the eye and said, "He's the only one who can sign the license transfer." I didn't sit at the head of the table, walked to the far end, pulled out a chair, and sat without a word. Not from weakness, from control. The quiet kind you earn through years of being dismissed, then proving why that was their biggest mistake. Candace tried to salvage it. This is ridiculous. He doesn't even work here anymore. Patricia flipped to another page, which is precisely why Section 14. 3B triggered. IP ownership reverted to his LLC the moment you terminated him. It's enforceable, confirmed by 3 separate legal reviews, and already entered into discovery. The room went silent except for the hum of the air conditioning and Tyler's nervous finger tapping on his laptop. I waited until the silence had settled like dust after an explosion. Then I reached into my leather portfolio, pulled out a single cream-colored business card, and slid it deliberately across the glass table to the lead negotiator. He picked it up, read it, leaned back, and tapped the card against his notepad twice. Then he turned toward Tyler, who was starting to sweat through his collar despite the air conditioning. "So," he asked, voice calm as a lake before a storm, "is the $300 million deal off, or is he the one who's fired?" The oxygen got sucked out of the room. Tyler made a sound between a laugh and a whimper, looking to Candace like she had cheat codes for this level of corporate humiliation. But her hands were already rifling through documents with the desperation of a magician realizing the rabbit had escaped and taken the hat with it. "We had full internal clearance," she stammered. "Our legal team said the IP was clean. It's our software." Patricia's eyes stayed fixed on my business card. The CFO leaned forward, pale as fresh drywall. "Candace, did you verify license status post-termination?" "I didn't need to," she snapped. "He was staff. We owned everything he created." "I thought Tyler said he built it," Phil interjected quietly. Tyler was now trying to minimize his involvement like a politician caught on tape. "I mean, yeah, but I didn't say I built the whole thing. It's like a collaborative effort, you know? A team thing." Patricia turned to her counsel, who nodded and delivered the killing blow. Section 14. 3B is enforceable. The moment Mr. Brennan was terminated without cause, all licensing rights reverted to T. Brennan Holdings, LLC. Apex no longer has authority to sell it, not without his consent. The room froze like a video that had buffered. The CFO's jaw clenched. Alan Brooks whispered something sharp to another board member. I saw the PR director slowly slide her notepad under her chair like she didn't want her name attached to any of this disaster. Candace opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Just a low inhale like she'd finally realized the party was over and she wasn't the host. She was the punchline. Tyler closed his laptop when he realized no one was coming to save him from his own incompetence. I didn't move, didn't speak. Let them sit in it. 25 years of being overlooked, sidelined, written out of my own legacy, all funneled into this one perfect moment of silence. They tried to erase the wrong guy. They held the emergency vote behind closed doors, but glass walls don't hide much. I sat outside, sipping coffee from the machine that had replaced the one I'd installed back in 2011, the same machine Tyler once broke trying to make protein shakes. Through the frosted panel, I could see the CFO pacing in tight circles. 2 board members gesturing at printouts like they were trying to decode hieroglyphics. Phil sitting with arms crossed, stone-faced. Patricia not even bothering to look at anyone because she already knew how this would end. 20 minutes later, Harold Holloway himself stepped out. Candace's father, the CEO, wearing the expression you only see in courtrooms and funeral homes. He avoided my eyes but nodded once, sharp and shallow. "Mr. Brennan," he said, voice flat as roadkill. "The board has voted unanimously to remove Tyler Holloway from the transaction, effective immediately." He paused, probably tasting each word before he said it. Candace has been placed on administrative leave pending a full internal audit, so she hadn't just lost the deal. She'd lost the room, the company, and probably her trust fund allowance. Phil walked up next with a new packet marked amendment, final terms. "We'd like you to sign as both consultant and LLC owner," he said. "Triple your old rate, non-compete waived, full autonomy over license transitions. You'll essentially be running point on all compliance integration." I flipped to the signature page. Read it once, read it again. They were doing everything possible to make this right, not from conscience but necessity. And I could live with that. I signed. One clean stroke across a line that had been reserved for people who thought they invented everything they inherited. When I stood, I didn't smile or gloat. Just closed the folder, handed it back, and walked toward the door. In the hallway, past the frosted glass and stunned silence, Candace stood by the copy machine with her arms crossed, heels off, bun collapsed. Her phone was in her hand, but whatever lifeline she was calling clearly wasn't picking up. She saw me. I slowed. She opened her mouth, maybe to protest, maybe to beg, maybe just to breathe. I said nothing. Nothing was the only answer that mattered. I walked past her like she was furniture in a building I no longer needed keys for. because now I owned the building. 6 months later, the company website updated their vendor page. Exclusive Compliance Systems, Partner T. Brennan Holdings, LLC. Every new contract, every client license, every audit trail flowed through me. Tyler's LinkedIn went quiet. His co-founder title mysteriously vanished. Candace's assistant issued a vague press release about wellness leave and family recalibration. And me? I went home, called my son, told him his old man wasn't as washed up as everyone thought. He just laughed and said he never doubted it. I was clearing more in quarterly consulting fees than I'd made in 2 years at Apex. Bought a new truck, cash. Started thinking about that retirement I'd been putting off. The best part wasn't the money, though that was nice. It was my grandson asking his mom why Grandpa was smiling so much at Christmas dinner. Turns out respect tastes better than revenge any day of the week. Sometimes the best victories are the quiet ones. You don't need to burn the bridge when you own the river. You just show up, do the work, and let competence speak for itself. The best part, I never had to raise my voice.